Hey friends, I wanted to take a quick moment before this video. First off, I want to let you know I am very grateful that you are here following me and getting your information about wealth building and real estate investing from yours truly. I know there are a lot of options out there and people you can watch, so I really appreciate that you trust me with your time and attention. Second, you may notice in this video that the video quality is not that great. That's because of the way that I recorded it. I had to do it on Zoom. I didn't have the right camera. Well, I fixed that. From now on, you should expect quality just like this in any video that you watch. So please pay attention because I think this is some really good content, but know that in the future, you'll be getting a higher quality video like you're seeing right now. All right, that's all I got. Thank you and check out this video. In this video, we are going to discuss how to find the next hot real estate market that you can get to before the trend goes viral and everybody else finds out about it. It's going to be things that I wish I knew back when I was in your situation, before there was a book called Long Distance Real Estate Investing, before Bigger Pockets was huge, and before I had the 10 plus years of real estate investing experience that I have now. I'm going to discuss the 3 principles that I look for when I'm trying to determine the next market that I'm going to invest in. And here's the best news. If you learn the principles, you never have to follow the crowd. You don't have to be a sheep. If you just Google what's the best market to look at, you're going to find the same study that everybody else finds on NBC News, where they're telling you about the next hot housing market. But these principles will give you the edge over the competition so that you know what to look for and you start investing long before everybody else figures it out. Now, remember, this is not financial advice. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a CPA. This is just for educational purposes. And I'm sharing with you the areas where I invest or the people that I know are investing. Here is where we start. The first principle that you need to understand about how real estate values go up or down is what I call the epicenter principle. I want you to think about an earthquake. There's always an epicenter, and then from there, the shock waves move out in a circle type of a pattern. Real estate works that way too. It doesn't matter where you are in America. I've seen these patterns play out time and time again in different markets, and that's one of the reasons that I feel comfortable investing out of my own local area. Because if you understand these patterns and this principle, you'll see that they work everywhere. Let's start with where I live in the San Francisco Bay Area. Now, this would work if you were in the Seattle market, if you were in the Austin, Texas market, if you were in Miami, Florida, all places where you see a lot of industry starting to form. That's an epicenter for an economy. So here, San Francisco wages tend to be very high. Same could go for San Jose in the South Bay, right? That's actually an area where you see 2 epicenters converging together, and in the peninsula the prices are higher than almost each of those things individually, because from here you can work in either of those markets. But what you find is that the most expensive real estate is at the very center of those cities. So if you took San Francisco, you have the CEOs of these really big companies. They're going to live inside the border of San Francisco itself. Same could be true of Austin, Texas. The people who have the best jobs there are going to live the closest to that job. They're not going to be experiencing those hour and a half commutes that the rest of us worker bees have to. So the best place to invest is closest to where the best jobs are, where the people actually want to live. Now, the problem is the values are so high that those properties are rarely going to cash flow, at least by traditional standards. So investors can't really get into those areas if you have to actually be owning a cash flowing property. If you're the just regular primary residence homeowner who wants to live close to work, you're probably going to make money on your primary residence if you buy in one of these A-grade epicenter type areas. But for everybody else, we have to live further away from work. So I want you to picture that as you move further away from the best place, the property values start going down because they're less desirable, just because the commute into work is going to be higher. You will have small pockets that will function as an exception to the rule. So you may have a really desirable gated community that's not super close to the job, but the values are still just as high as the ones that are. But in general, the further away you go, the cheaper the real estate becomes. So here is why this is valuable when you're trying to figure out, am I at the top of the market? Am I at the bottom of the market? When should I invest? Many people have the erroneous notion that low purchase prices equal less risk. That's not true. You can't equate risk with purchase price. During a downturn, when values drop, if you think about it, they don't drop in the epicenter nearly as much as they drop on the fringe areas that are very far away. So in my market, that would be areas like Stockton, California, got hammered when the market went down. But the areas that were super close to San Francisco, they didn't really get hit that hard. So if you actually believe you're at the top of a market, the last place you want to be investing is the fringe areas, which coincidentally also have the lowest purchase price. That is where you want to be careful. So when you're trying to pick the next market you want to invest in, if you believe you're at the top of the market, you don't want to be in a fringe community. If you believe you're near the bottom of a market, or maybe you just had a crash, or you think there's a lot of room to run, buying in those fringe communities can make a lot more sense because they can still go up in value. All right, moving into the second principle that I would like you to understand when trying to pick the next hot market. Number 2, study, follow, and make it your job to be aware of migration patterns, where our business is moving to and where our people moving to. Here's my perspective. The only way that I will ever lose over the long term in real estate investing is if I lose tenants. That's the one downside of owning a business that's actually a property, is the only way that you collect income is from having a resident or a tenant in that property. So if nobody wants to live in that area, you're not going to have anyone to rent to. It doesn't matter how great of a deal you got. Eventually, you're going to get bled dry because your expenses have stayed, but your income has dropped. So looking at where people are moving to is a no-brainer, but powerful way of trying to figure out where the next hot market is going to be. But what should you look for when trying to figure out what the next area that people are going to move to will be? Now, there's a couple issues that I like to look at when I'm trying to pick my next market. The first would be climate. I have a basic belief that people would rather live in an area with warmer, nicer weather than frigid, freezing weather. Now, that does not mean that you can't make money investing in cold states. It just means that over the course of time, in general, I believe that people are going to be moving towards warmer climate. The next thing I look at is that many people want to move to an area that's closer to their job. Now, this is something we may see changing in the future as sort of the metaverse and virtual reality start to become bigger. Maybe people can work from home like they're in the Matrix. They just sit in their work chair and jack in. But until we get to that point, I'm still going to assume that people want to live closer to where they're working, which means instead of just asking where are the people going, ask where are the businesses moving. And if you want to know where the businesses are moving, you have to ask the question of what matters to a business. If you're a business owner, whether it's a large business or a medium-sized business, we're not talking about small businesses like someone who owns a local Togo's or Subway sandwich shop, but someone who employs a large number of people. They care about regulations. They care about taxes. They care about support that they are or aren't going to get from the state and local governments. They also care about where the people who work for them want to live. It's why you don't see a ton of businesses moving to the hypothetical North Dakota, because it's harder for them to draw people to work on their business when it's an environment that is that frigid and difficult to live in. So they tend to move to those more temperate clients, like what I was saying. So one thing that you can look at are what are the states that currently have a business-friendly environment that are trying to attract businesses to work there. You are likely to see the migration patterns of where people move be very similar. And if you throw in the good weather, now you're actually getting a pretty tight data box of where you can expect more businesses to be moving into. Now, I'm just going to pause for one quick minute and say, I would love it if you would like and subscribe to the video that you're watching right now. Now, this isn't something I charge for. You don't have to join an exclusive mastermind to get this information. The only thing that I'm asking for is the energy it takes to take your finger and push your screen. The third principle is industry trends. How are people using houses? And more importantly, how are consumers looking to use houses that you can tap into? Let's take an area like Scottsdale, Arizona. For a long time, the prices in Scottsdale were so high that you could not buy a house and rent it out in the traditional real estate investing model. The price to rent ratio was just too far off, which meant the people that were buying houses in Scottsdale were either a flipper or a person that just wanted to live there. Now, the people that just wanted to live there, they still made good money. In a sense, they were still real estate investors that still built wealth buying in an area that appreciated. But once the short-term rental market exploded, now you could get a lot more income on the short-term rental market in Scottsdale than you ever could have on a year-long or month-to-month lease. What that meant was that investors were coming in and paying much more than the appraised value or much more than someone who just wanted to live in the house was willing to pay. But every time a property sells for more than what the other ones did in that neighborhood, it bumps the appraised value up. And so you had these investors sort of forcing equity every time they paid more, bringing the value of Scottsdale real estate higher. That's looking for an industry trend. If you had seen, oh man, Airbnb is going to blow up, and you got into Scottsdale first because you recognize that's an obvious tourist destination, you would have done great. So what are some other examples of ways that you can recognize sort of industry changes? Well, we've recently shut down pipelines in North Dakota. For a long time, we had a fracking going on in those areas, and there was a lot of jobs that moved there that paid really well. So a lot of people migrated there to work. If you anticipated that when the Trump administration came in, they were going to start drilling in that area so that America could sort of have its own oil supply, and you went and provided housing for the workers in North Dakota, you'd have crushed it. They needed somewhere to live. There was an industry that was moving there, and you saw the change and you got out there in front of it. Now, conversely, when the Biden administration stepped in, they shut down a lot of those jobs. So then people are going to leave that area. So this sort of like monitoring what's going on in the overall industry is important both ways, both for getting into the next hot market and getting out of the next cooling market. All right, so if you're looking for some software, some data to help you make decisions, or maybe you just are saying, hey, my gut tells me this, but I'd like some kind of objective data to help support it, here's what I would recommend. The good old-fashioned US Census Bureau is a great way to look and see where people are moving to. If you have a hunch that people are moving to the Southeast and you go look it up on there, you would be right. There's a ton of people moving to the Southeast. Another one would be websites like AirDNA or other sites of that ilk that will tell you this is how much you can expect if you bought a property in this area. Now, AirDNA is specifically for short-term rentals, and so that wouldn't work for everything. But if your question was, is there a lot of demand for people that want to live here? That's a good way that you can look and find out. Another would be sites like Rentometer or Bigger Pockets Pro Insights, where you can look and quickly find out what is the average rent in this area, and is it more or less than what it was before. If rents are going down, that's a very bad sign. That hardly ever happens. That's a put the brakes on and figure out exactly why that's happening before you invest there. If rents are going up but steadily, that's okay. But if you see massive rent increases, that is usually tied to a shortage of supply, which is usually tied to a higher desirability, more demand than you actually have supply. And that's where you want to buy. Now, even if prices are higher, if they're continuing to rise, that's okay. Don't get stuck into that trap of low prices equal low risk, because that's many times the opposite case. Another thing that I would look at is I would call local property managers and ask them how much demand there are for whatever type of house you're looking at in their city. Now, that's not a website. You actually have to talk to a human being. So if you're one of those people that's afraid of that, hey, find a book like Yes, You Can or The Little Engine That Could, read it, get yourself pumped up, and actually call a human being and ask them, what is the rental situation like in this city? The reason I love that is they are the boots on the ground. They are constantly trying to put tenants in properties. And they're also constantly talking to other landlords that already own real estate in the area that you want to buy in. So they see both sides of the equation. And when you talk to them, you'll be able to tell from the tone of their voice and most likely the words that they say, if this is an area where they need more tenants or they need more houses to rent to the tenant. So obviously, as a real estate investor, you want it to be a situation where they need more houses instead of needing more tenants. All right, so for a quick recap, principle number one, the epicenter principle. Identify in your market what are the areas where the businesses all are and the prime real estate is, and expand from there until you find the part that is the next area that everyone's going to be moving to, which should lead to increased demand and an increase in price and values. Number two, study, follow, and make it your job to be aware of migration patterns. Where are businesses moving to and where are people moving to? Number three, understand changes in the industry or industry trends. Short-term rentals have exploded into the real estate game and changed the way that properties are valued. I think corporate housing is going to do the same thing. What is going on in the industry and how can you identify properties that will work for that new purpose? And can you get there before everybody else figures it out? Now, I've been in this situation many times that you may find yourself in right now. What he just said is exactly what I've been thinking. And I love it when I have those moments when I've got this idea in my head and I'm like, well, this is what I feel like, but I don't know. What if I'm wrong? And then somebody else has the same frequency coming out of their mouth that I'm thinking between my ears. If that's you, first off, awesome. I'm glad that you're here. Second off, I want to know it. So could you please comment in the section below and let me know what you're thinking as you hear this, and maybe what are some of the hot markets that you are looking into yourself. I'd love to get several people saying, hey, this is where I'm looking at and here's why. See if that matches up with what other listeners of this video have been thinking as well, and maybe give you some confirmation and some confidence that that is a good market for you to be purchasing in. All right, keep an eye out for more videos from yours truly trying to help you build wealth in real estate. And if you've got some time, check out another video.